Welcome to TM Broadcasting. We are coming to you live from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Frank Allen. The date this evening is 4/29/22. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of interviewing Ramola D. and Lorraine Valente of the TI community. We all know about Ramola D. from Ramola D Reports, The Everyday Concerned Citizen, and so much more. Lorraine has kept vigil on atrocities committed on animals and Lorraine's own nightmare of real estate mobbing and her kidnapping, much in the same manner that Ramola D was. If you would like to call in and listen, the phone number is 518-801-1318. Questions, call 617-987-8603. All in the U.S., +1. Thank you. Okay, we have an unknown caller here. And I don't have the option. Okay. If I hit cancel, it cancels everything. Okay, I would like to ask you, Ramola.
Yes. Hi, Frank. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's quite an honor to have you here. And I'd like to know what was going through your mind, or if you can give us a sense of what it felt like in your position to be actually taken away to Dorchester, to this hospital. And Lorraine, I would like to put that question to you, and you can answer after Ramola completes.
Thank you.
1 second. So Frank, first, thank you for having me on your call tonight. And if I understand correctly, you're just kind of asking me about what was going through my mind at the time that this happened, right? At my home, as you know, the backdrop to the story is police officers, literally, they were all police, I think, and EMS they had called, and a guy who introduced himself to me as a mental health professional, but who I find, looking at the website, is very much affiliated with the police, had barged into my home and had spent some time literally not listening to anything, but verbally intimidating and ultimately physically intimidating. And, they manhandled me and they took me out of the house and into the EMS, etc. I was in disbelief, really, that this was happening. And I was trying to speak to my husband through this, but unfortunately, there are some extenuating circumstances here. And my husband has not been very aware and cognizant of what's been happening in this neighborhood for a long time. So it was a situation of literally being on my own and knowing that I was on my own. So that's sort of what was happening. And I know Lorraine had a similar experience, so perhaps she can talk about, how she experienced her own.
Yes. What happened to me was a little bit different than what happened to you, Ramola, in that I received a phone call from the Malden Police Department in the morning on December 10th, 2018, and Lieutenant Thomas Mantle said, can we send a police officer by to drop off a property loss statement? And I said, well, I can come and pick it up. I mean, how come I've never received one before? I've had reported so much vandalism and theft of my property, and they never provided a loss statement. So I said, okay. And several hours later, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally did a knock on the door. And there's a police officer along with a woman whose name I did not know at the time, but her name is Tina Booth with Monmouth PESS. So I walked out with them to show them the vandalism of my tree. Literally, somebody sliced the branches off and pulled the branches off, and I gave them a sheet of paper documenting the vandalism and stuff. And I'm waiting for my property law statement, and I never received it. And then they started asking me bizarre questions like how do you sleep? You know, like how much sleep do you get? Yes, literally, that's what she said. And I said, well, you know, to be honest with you, last night I didn't sleep very much because my cat was very ill and he died, and I stayed up with him all night long.
Oh, no.
You know? Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story. But so anyway, because I said that I didn't sleep well, she used that against me. And then stated that you submitted too many police reports to the police department. And I'm thinking, well, how many is too many? I've lived here for 30 years, and I've also witnessed crimes, you know, not only against me, but other people. So how many are too many? But I got a very bad feeling, so I ended the conversation. I turned around and I walked to my front door, and I closed it behind me. Well, Tina Booth put her hand on the door handle, and it was literally a tug of war. They broke into my house. They broke in.
Gosh.
They would not leave. And what was going through my mind at the time was I could not believe that somebody broke into my house. What was happening here? And then, you know, what had happened with previous people went through my mind, that they were going through this medical kidnapping thing with me. And I was just very confident. And she started spewing all of these things that I am, and I had just met her. And I said, well, by what criteria did you utilize to make that diagnosis? And she couldn't answer me. So this is what happens when you try to lock up a psychologist, right?
Yeah. No, you were prepared.
Yeah, they wouldn't leave, and then they brought backup. They brought a sergeant, another police officer, an EMS truck was parked outside. I've got this video recorded. They wiped clean my porch recordings that would have clearly demonstrated they broke in, but I have all the other recordings, and one of which I shared with you. You could see the whole swarm of them on my driveway. Like I was some criminal or something.
I think they did something similar. I mean, they called for backup, and the guy who suddenly showed up in a neon jacket and literally put his arm around me and dragged me out like he had any right to touch me. So other people showed up after the first three showed up, and they had these two very hefty EMS women, who looks like giants, wearing blue gloves, walking into my house and prowling about like jaguars. I mean, seriously, it was such an invasion of privacy. And I swear, my husband had no idea that you can actually say no to the police and not let anybody in. They cannot enter your house without a warrant. And he actually let them in because, they deceived him. They said, they literally gave him to understand he had no choice in the matter, and that now there was going to be a program. And, they tried to talk to me. So actually, in my case, Lorraine, things are a little bit different because I have become a Massachusetts state national, an American state national and citizen, which is what Anna von Reitz is doing, if you know about what she's doing. She's been working to restore the original USA on the land and soil jurisdiction of the United States of America, which is pulling, the country back to the original form of government that was on the land and soil under American common law, and the U.S. Constitution, which is not honored at all by U.S. Inc., which is currently running the show and the media, right? Yeah. And all of these other corporations, government corporations. So you probably know that everything is incorporated now. All our governments are incorporated.
Yes.
You know that, right? So, so that is so that's within the, this is stuff I've been learning about and studying and talking to people about on my shows and working to understand because I'm very, very concerned about the loss of rights and freedoms of everybody in the country. And as you know, this whole targeting scenario is an expression at the extreme level of loss of rights and freedoms, right? We've been
Correct.
deprived of our rights under the color of law, right?
I wanted to interview.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
I just wanted to say something. This means
okay.
that if I was in my front yard and I called over to my neighbor Jim and said, "Hey Jim, how you doing?" and there was somebody driving by, they could actually call the police claiming that I was crazy yelling, and the
Oh
police
my
would
God.
come and possibly take me away. Does
That's
this
That's
sound
absolutely true,
viable?
Frank.
It is.
Hmm.
Well, what does this country come to? We have freedom of speech being stepped on everywhere. Everything is censored.
hmm
That's why this call, this show, this radio broadcast is not censored. And the reason we developed our own station is because we were getting censored. So we will
Yeah.
never be censored again.
That's wonderful to
Well,
hear,
good
because
for
that
you.
is indeed the primary aspect of what's going on. Freedom of speech is being curtailed. And as a journalist and a writer, I can tell you that my work is under extra scrutiny just because I have been openly publishing the truth. And, you know, this is precisely the freedom of press and freedom of speech is being censored as I have experienced it as a journalist, most definitely. But
Correct.
you know, this is one of the reasons why I went into this whole thing of trying to find out what the governmental situation is all about. And the good news is, all of you who are birthright Americans, born in America, you actually are state citizens of your own states. You just have to declare your political status. You know, follow what Anna Wright is doing, because she has a very simple methodology to do that. It's not taking anything away from you. It's in fact reviving your birthright American status. You have birthright American citizenship status in your own state already by virtue of having been born here. And everybody who's naturalized, like I am, can appeal to become, a state citizen, which is what I have done, and I have changed my status. I'm in the process of fully finishing and publishing my paperwork, which I think these people knew about because they follow everything on my computer, right? They hack in and watch everything you're doing. They know which letters you're finished writing and which letters you're yet to send. So
Yeah.
I think they knew that I was, yeah, right. And so I think they knew I was in the business of trying to finish the notification process. I have finished the declaration process, but I need to do the notification process. So I think they wrapped up their attempt to capture me before I could finish the notification process, which is what they did.
Yes, and Ramola, you have the right to privacy in your own home. You have the
Yes.
right to enjoy your own home without fear of someone breaking in, including the police department, and disrupting
Correct.
that privacy. Go ahead.
Correct.
Yes.
And that is even under U.S. Inc. You're right. Even under maritime admiralty law, you have that right, and that's also enshrined in the Constitution. You have the right to privacy. So I know all this. Unfortunately, my husband is not as savvy, even though he's a tax attorney. You know, he's an attorney, but because his field is not this field, constitutional law or whatever, I don't think he's been very aware. In any case, what happened was, I'm standing not just on my rights as an American, I'm standing on my rights as a living woman, flesh and blood, operating under American common law on the land and soil jurisdiction of the United States. And they know what that means. It's called living in the private. You may have heard of it, right? It's called living in the private and calling upon yourself as a living woman or a living man, flesh and blood being. Now, this goes into the whole birth certificate legal fiction story, if you are aware of that. Do you all know what that's all about?
Yeah.
You
Well,
do know, right?
I think that you should explain it, Ramola, because there are many people in the audience who may not know.
Okay, okay. So let me just say it is connected to the fact that we have governments which are corporations, and no corporation can communicate with a living being directly. But in order to communicate with the living beings, what they did was they embarked on massive fraud. And they did this way back in time. I think it happened around the time of the Federal Reserve being formed, and then later cemented into place by FDR during, when he passed his emergency banking acts and whatnot, and he took the gold away from the people. You know all of that history, right? So what has happened is when people are born in this country and a birth certificate is created, what really is happening is the parents are registering the child with the state. They are literally handing over the baby to the state. You don't even know that you are, but because they have kept it fraudulent and secret and deceived people. And in the process, the child's name is capitalized and notated on this birth certificate, which is then securitized. It's actually made into a bond, and it's like and it's so weird because what they're really doing is they are taking the kind of potential of the child, the work potential, the labor potential of the child, and putting a number on it, a figure on it, like a lifetime figure, and then putting it on this bond, securitizing it, and trading it, literally, on Wall Street, on the stock market. So, and this is all going to pay back the so-called debt of the United States, you see. So we are all bond slaves, debt slaves to the United States, bankruptcy. And because of that, there are several things that have happened. So this name is seen as a legal fiction. And this is the name that shows up in all our documentation: Social Security card, driver's license, the passport, etc. And so when someone comes and says, you know how when police officers stop you, they'll say, what's your name? Or give me your name, show me your driver's license. They're actually going after that all caps name, which is the legal person, which is the corporation. Not you, but that thing, the driver's license.
Correct.
But most people, you see, but people don't know this, so they say, oh, I am this person. So you are voluntarily engaging in what is called an adhesion contract. You're connecting your flesh and blood self to that name. And that way, this is how they capture people, and they hold people responsible.
The corporation, which is the United States of America, in caps, means everything around 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now,
yes, yeah.
And all the states are sub corporations. And people don't really understand that. But if you look, when a town becomes a city, it automatically has to be incorporated. And corporations run everything.
That's right. And I think part of the problem with the targeting also is because corporations run everything. Everything's been corporatized. And we've got defense contractors, we've got military contractors, security contractors, and they're operating on notions of profit. We've got prison contractors, right? And we've got hospital contractors. So even this situation, bringing this down to the whole psych hold thing, the hospital stands to gain when the police bring somebody in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they stand to gain from the insurance. They get the money from your insurance.
Correct.
Because the hospital will file a claim.
This is
so it's ruthless. It's ruthless, and it's like exploitative of the people.
Correct. So
it's
many people
fraud.
have made.
It's fraud.
It is fraud, most definitely. Very many people are made from very wealthy people or well-to-do people into penniless people because they have gone into a hospital, and the hospital has attached everything that they own and will own. So you cannot win unless you stick with an attorney and work through it very carefully. If you don't, you'll walk out of that hospital if you do with nothing. And if it's a nursing home, there will be nothing to pass on to your sons and daughters and grandchildren. Would you
Yeah,
like
this
to?
is doubly. Sorry, I was just going to say this is doubly. Go ahead, Lorraine.
I'm sorry. It's also this psychiatric reprisal. This is not anything new. This is a war crimes. It's political abuse of psychiatry, and it's the misuse of psychiatry, and it was used back actually in the days of the Nazis. It was used in Eastern Europe, in Romania, and even here in the United States, when women back in the 1800s, early 1900s, would come forward, in therapy, telling their psychiatrist that they had been raped by a family member, rather than being counseled and believed, they were sent to an institution and medicated for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think tragedies like that have happened and are still happening. People are being wrongfully psychiatrically held and committed to these institutions for long periods of time, and as you say, medicated for the rest of their lives. It's absolutely horrifying what's going on.
Yes. And then for somebody like you and me, for you, because you're a public figure, you're a speaker, you've got a website, you're a worldwide interviewer. Me, I'm not any of those things. And what they did to me was basically because of my reporting the vandalism, which is they were setting up, vandalism at my house and the theft of my personal property in an attempt to discredit. Because, once they label you, it's in the system. It's very hard to get rid of. It could be a fake, falsified narrative, which happens with targeted people anyway, but it's very hard to erase that.
And I think that is the intention. That is the intention, to get that label associated with your name so that you lose credibility. It's a way to discredit you publicly.
Absolutely. And to Frank's point earlier, where he was talking about, if I'm talking to a neighbor across the road, et cetera, that somebody can report me. Well, this happened, to me in New Jersey. I was actually on my driveway, and my new neighbor reported me to the police department. And then as a result of, literally, because she threatened me, so I responded to her, and then she said, "Do you have anything else you want to say before I call the police?" So this is something who had vandalized my property already, and I had proof of it. But when I received the incident report, the police never included my side of the story, and they actually labeled me in the incident report a terror threat. I was walking on my driveway. I kid you not.
That's right.
They wrote disorderly conduct, me, on my driveway in a house I lived for 30 years, and the new neighbor wasn't even there 9 months. Yes, and this is how they set people up.
Yes.
This is exactly what happened to me, Lorraine. This is a new neighbor who showed up in this neighborhood late last year, and who's not introduced herself to me, but who spent a lot of time engaging in neighborhood watch harassment with the rest of the goons in this area, who do the arrival departure monitoring and stalking and staring and hostility, refusal to speak, but, just hang around and come out exactly when you come out, turn on their lawnmowers and, sort of blast the air with noise. And not just the lawnmower, power saws, rattling equipment, all sorts of things, leaf blowers that sort of, blast people's eardrums into outer space, things like that. They've done it for years at this point. It's childish, it's petty, but it's very harassive, and this woman has been part of it. And I had actually handed out a kind of a noise harassment notice last year to her, and she said, I don't know anything about it. I just moved here. I'm a tenant. The landlady must have called the landscape people. I said, do send that notice to them. It just said, terrible noise on this particular day, and next time, could you please keep it down? And, she didn't introduce herself. Here I am going over to speak to her, and she doesn't introduce herself. And I said, well, she said, I'm new to the neighborhood. I said, oh, welcome to the neighborhood. Although I was quite aware what kind of neighborhood it was. I said it somewhat sardonically. Yeah. And she didn't respond. She didn't give me her name, and neither did I. Well, my name was on the notice, and I left. And then after that, what happened a few days before the police showed up, because she called the police. So I think what she is set-up artist or a framer or a whatever they call themselves, informant, provocateur. Provocateurs. But, I've also picked up EMF pulses from her house, Lorraine, as also from other people's houses close by. And so I had actually said, then she screamed at me. She screamed at me saying, stop videotaping my children, literally out of the blue. My back is turned to her. I've got my cell phone in my hand, and I'm taking pictures of the flowers to send to my dad right in my garden. My front garden's blooming, and I'm taking pictures. Screaming from behind me, stop videotaping my children. The next time I catch you videotaping my children, I'm going to call the police. So I turned around and said, stop using microwave weapons on me. And what on earth are you talking about? Why on earth would I be videotaping your kids? Your stupid kids is, in fact, exactly what I said. And, she was screaming her head off. So I think she created a scene, and she pushed the exchange between us already to a kind of a stringent level, because I literally yelled back at her. And, and it was outrageous. So I think what we had was a public verbal dispute. Now, when people in a neighborhood have a public verbal dispute, do the police show up and say, one of these people is mentally ill, let's cart them off? Is that even normal?
No, never
happened.
It's
not normal.
No.
It's not normal. It doesn't happen that way. So she called the police. The guy showed up on my doorstep. Oh, I think it was the next day. So what happened really was she yelled and shouted. The next day, I wrote a notice up, which, by the way, was pretty comprehensive, and I'm very glad I wrote it because I got it all off my chest. I explained what's been happening in this neighborhood for 8 years. I am the one who's been subjected to neighborhood watch harassment. And not just that, there's been microwave weapon harassment as well. And, I use that term microwave weapon advisedly because as a journalist, I've been exploring these technologies. And that is a term that is accurate. It is a military term, but it is an accurate term, And I mention this because later it was used against me, and I'll explain in just a minute. So yeah, I've picked up EMF pulses from her house and from some other houses. And I wrote it all down in my notice, and I explained what happened with this particular altercation as well, that she started it by screaming at me, a false and paranoid accusation about her kids, and which was public slander, public defamation, which is why I jumped right in to defend my name and said, that I told her, in fact, that's a false accusation. That is, very wrong. And, I went back into the house. It's pointless continuing to yell at a woman who clearly is acting very oddly, strangely, and attackingly, aggressively. She was aggressive. So I departed, and that was that. And the next day I wrote this notice, and I put it in her door and in the door of the neighbor. There, it was a duplex, in the door of the neighbor next to her. Because she went and spoke to this neighbor right after I saw them from the window. This woman ran over and they were talking and stuff. So I wanted to inform this other woman, and actually this other woman is somebody whom I used to speak to, who used to speak to me very well before I was targeted in this neighborhood. I was targeted 2 years after we arrived here. So I kind of wanted to explain to her what has been going on really, because what's happened, Lorraine, and I think everybody who has experienced targeting knows this. They activate all the neighbors in the neighborhood. They put them on some kind of text notification thing, whether it's RiskNet or InfraGard or whatever. And so this is how they're able to do their arrival departure monitoring. As you're approaching your house, as you pull into the drive, as you get out of your house, they're able to time their actions as well, right, at the same time.
Yes.
So
some of them are
they're
part of the Citizen Corp. Citizen Court.
Citizen
Community
Court.
Watch.
Yes, Citizen.
Yes, Citizen Court.
Community Watch. There's different ones. Yeah, through the Sheriff's Association,
The Sheriff's
through
Department.
Infraguard. Mm-hmm.
So, do you believe this woman actually made the necessary arrangements and phone calls and whatnot to paint a false picture of you? If so, do you have recourse against this woman? Are you planning recourse against the police department and the woman? Don't answer because I just realized you can't. We can talk privately on that.
Yeah, yeah. Some things I will speak privately later with you, if you wish, Frank. But I'll tell you what I can say. Okay, so I sent my note. Let me just pick up the story because I can answer your questions in just a minute. So after I handed the notice, put the notice in their door, she called the police then. And, this guy came to the door and I said, I went to the door and I said, I'm not speaking to the police. I'm not in your jurisdiction. And this is what I said. I'm a living woman. I do not consent. I'm not in your jurisdiction. He said, okay. And he backed off. Now, behind me, my husband came down the stairs and came to the door because he's working at home these days. And at that moment, this guy said, oh, but sir, can I speak to you? And I told my husband, who hadn't known of any of this because I'd, kept it out of him, out of his awareness at that point in time, given the situation where someone is estranged and he has no idea what's going on in the neighborhood. He wanted to go out and speak to the police officer, and I said, look, you need to speak to me first, all right? And I need to tell you this. He ignored me, pushed past me, opened the door, talked to the police officer, and the police officer said a bunch of garbage to him about, harassment is illegal. Your wife has been handing out flyers and notices and harassing the people and accusing them of this, that, and the other. That's what he said to him, and that's what I heard. And I also heard stuff about, she's posting things online. And I thought it meant posting notices online. And I said, yes, I'll be posting my notice online. But, later on, I found out from my husband and from a nurse in the ER where they took me to, I found out what the story was, what she had said, and possibly what this police officer had told my husband that day, and also the three guys who showed up on the porch the next day and also said stuff to my husband. Here's what the story was. So I heard it from this nurse, and the nurse said, she's here because she's been taking video recordings of the neighbors' children and posting it on Facebook, posting these films online on Facebook, and she thinks there's nothing wrong with this. I came out of the restroom, so I was in the restaurant hearing all this. I came out and said, was it you who said that just now? She said, yeah, I said it. That's what, she admitted it. So I said, well, let me tell you that's absolutely false. That is an absolute false claim. One, I have not taken any kind of video of this woman's children. And two, I don't post anything on Facebook like that. I don't post images or films of neighbors on Facebook. In fact, I don't even know how to get things off my phone and post it anywhere. And you can ask my daughter that. I have an iPhone, and I don't really know how to move photos. I'm constantly trying to figure this out and send it to anybody like my dad, who's on WhatsApp. And I finally figured things out sort of very slowly. So I'm the last person to accuse of taking films of people and putting it online on social media. And there's so much else associated with that, isn't there, Lorraine? It's like, it is a slur, it's defamation, it's slander. It's so pedo, right? To be taking photos of kids or films of kids. I think that was the implication, that here we've got a kind of pedophile in action. And what really amazes me is that at this point, the police have surfaced what I think they did 8 years ago when they first targeted me. I was running children's workshops. I was running children's art and creativity workshops, out of my home. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, the parents started to pull their kids off. And then I started to get all this targeting. And I wondered what had been said to them. What is happening? Because these parents loved my workshops. Their children loved my workshops. Everything was fabulous. In fact, some of the parents have been in on my art workshops, helping on occasion. So how did this happen? And I think this is what happened. I think storylines of pedo-ness have been put out in my name. Massive slander, massive smears, massive defamation. And so this woman, I think, was employed by this little cartel, who are running these operations on me in my neighborhood. She was employed as an informant and as a provocateur to engage in this crime of issuing a public false claim to me. And I heard about it only in that hospital, So this is the story the police told my husband, and this is the story through which they got his acquiescence to open the door, because they pretty much said, we have a procedure. This is what we are going to do. And they actually said as they came in, Ramola, you have no choice about this. And I was saying, I'm not speaking to these police, and I'm speaking only to you, Paul. I'm looking at my husband, talking to him. And I'm saying, I'm not speaking to you. And they're going on in the background, verbal intimidation and threat. There's nothing you can do about this. Here's what's going to happen. And as I'm speaking to my husband, they rush off outside. They, talk amongst themselves, rush off and get back up, get an ambulance, whatever. And then they engage in their massive kidnapping procedure as well. And here's the other thing. So this goes back to the issue of jurisdiction. You don't give your name because the name is the key, you see, through which they capture you. You don't give your name. And this is a good piece of advice to anybody, really. If anybody tries to engage in a crime against you, do not give your name, And you can also say you don't speak to police, you don't answer questions. And you can say, Fifth Amendment, you can just say, you pleaded the Fifth. You need to go talk to a lawyer. And you leave. And you do not need to speak to police. You do not need to give your name. My husband gave my name and my date of birth to these guys. They put it on their form. Whole bunch of rubbish and utter drivel on that form. I probably will write more about it, but I have spoken a little bit about it in some interviews, and I probably will continue. But that was what they did. They wrote up a bunch of lies, and this guy, okay, here's where microwave weapons comes back in, because I mentioned to my husband, as these guys were standing there waving my notice in their hands, I said to him, this is all about, the fact that I'm actually being openly addressing as a journalist the issue of microwave weapons and technologies being used on people, right, which are also being used in this neighborhood. So this guy who called himself Tim O'Brien and a mental health professional, really smarmy, oily guy, sort of sidled up to me and said, so Ramola, you mentioned microwave weapons. What are those, Ramola? Tell us more. I mean, it was so obvious, so creepy, and so it was clear entrapment. And it was clear entrapment based on agenda, you see? And this is why, Lorraine and Frank, media work is so important, and I think my journalism is very important. And not just mine, but everybody's journalism who addresses the subject. That's what I mean. Journalism is so important, And so as a journalist, I stand completely confident and firm because I've read the documents, I've published the documents, and I've pointed to where the documents are that actually address crowd control technologies, non-lethal weapons technologies, electronic warfare weapon technologies in just those terms. And the military and the DOJ working now together. It's been 20 years, 25 years since they brought these weapons into law enforcement, into the police stations. They're keeping it quiet. But, the fact that they're keeping it quiet, they're maintaining secrecy around it, permits them to engage in this kind of, what is it exactly, coercion, threat, and the use of psychiatry to tie people down when they know not only that these weapons exist, but they know they have them in their arsenal. They know there are experimentations and operations going on to test the use of these weapons in different ways. These are behavior modification weapons. They're biohacking weapons. They're neurohacking weapons. They need to be publicly spoken about. Everybody needs to know about them. And, I think journalism is the conduit to getting it to be openly spoken about. So in any case, he took that word, he fixated on it, and then he wrote it up. He wrote up a bunch of rubbish on his form. He said things like, patient reports, first of all, never a patient. I resisted that beginning to end. Patient reports that microwave weapons are going through her body. That was really ridiculous. As a writer, that is not how you write or speak. And, it's all sorts of rubbish like that. And I think I'd thrown out a casual comment to my husband saying, oh my God, these guys are so Masonic. Look at the Masonic way in which they're standing. As soon as I said that, they started to shuffle because they were standing with their arms, akimbo, their legs apart, doing the Masonic two-pillar stance. And they started to look very uncomfortable. But they wrote it down as she accuses the QPD officers of being in a satanic cult. How do you like that?
Oh, boy. And the
Very
plot.
interesting, isn't it? Yeah, so obviously all of this is rubbish. And later when I showed this form to the one psychiatrist over there who I think was really smart and showed an awareness of military technology, she said there's so many irregularities with this form. She said, first of all, it shouldn't have been signed by a police officer. And this guy who signed it has actually checked the wrong box. He said, I've interviewed the person. And I also said, I didn't interview with anybody. I didn't speak to any of them. I spoke to my husband. I never interviewed. There was no interview. So she noticed all of that. She said all of these are irregularities. And, the things that they have written. And the fact also, she said, that this mental health guy showed up with 2 police. She said that is very strange. That doesn't happen.
It's
well,
curious. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Lorraine. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What's interesting about all of this, there are some common themes. There's, the snitch neighbor. There's the agenda. The assault, entrapment, discrediting, etc. But in every instance, it usually involves the police department. And the last time I looked, I don't recall any of them having psychiatric diplomas or degrees or certifications. Do you?
They do not.
No. And attending like an FBI academy for 10 weeks to learn the dirty tricks of the trade doesn't give them the right to label someone. They're public servants. They're not mental health workers. And I have yet to see any one of them accurately, quote unquote, diagnosed, which they should not be doing. I don't know that it's in their job description to diagnose someone. In fact, if someone bona fide has a mental health issue, those people need to be handled with kid gloves.
Exactly. Thank you, Lorraine. In fact, as a psychologist, I think you know the score. If somebody were truly mentally ill, and I've made this point in interviews so far, it's like somebody very young, okay, somebody in a state of panic, who's prone to panic attacks or has high anxiety, somebody with true mental illness or who is depressed, that person is an emotionally vulnerable person. You don't approach that person. You know what I mean? You don't approach that person except with great care, with great empathy, with great compassion. And I know that as a writer who's actually, had troubled kids in my classes. And you know that as a psychologist who's probably met many troubled people, right? You know that we don't, and just
de-escalate.
Right?
It's about de-escalating, not escalating the issue. But the agenda is not to de-escalate. The agenda is to anger you so that you act out so that they can arrest you, so that they can diagnose you. And that's the agenda. And that's why they have neighbor on neighbor, harassment, noise campaigns, light campaigns. And the police are aware of it. Not all of them. Not all of them are in the know, but the top ones are in the know about what's happening and are involved.
And I think you've spelled that out brilliantly. That's exactly right. They want to escalate it into a crisis situation, and they actually want you to act out and get angry. And in my case, there was no acting out. All I was stating, no consent, and you have no jurisdiction, very calmly. And in fact, I didn't I didn't do anything more than that. But because I was speaking to my husband and they were right there, this guy said acute agitation. So if you're speaking, that's put down as acute
He did
agitation.
not even interview you. How can he say these things? He is taking something secondhand from another person who could be
Mm-hmm.
crazy and most likely
Mm-hmm.
is. So it's totally.
Yeah, that's totally wrong. Everything was so off about this, and I'll tell you what. Even worse, when I was, stuck in there for 6 days, I called the Quincy Police Department. I literally called them 3 times, and I finally made it because it was the Easter weekend. They were closed. They didn't have the records department open on Monday, so I had to call on Tuesday again. And I wanted to find out what the report was. I said, "How can I get a hold of the police report? Who made it? What does it say? I'd like to see it." And this woman checked everything and said, "Ma'am, there's no police report." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, there was a call made, and I said, "Yeah, and what was the call about, and who called?" And she said there was no name given. So this woman has called, not given her name, and she said there was my name was also not mentioned apparently. But then after that, they got a call from one of the police guys saying, "We're transporting in Brewster EMS, a person to Kearney Hospital." And so when I called, I was calling from Kearney Hospital. I identified myself, as the name under which I was being held, etc. So she had that information. And I said, this is actually political persecution of a journalist, and you're telling me there is no information there as to who called, what they said, why this happened, why people came to my house and kidnapped me. But that is the case. There's no information. So at this point, Frank, to actually answer your question further, I have put in 3 FOIA requests to Quincy Police Department and to the Massachusetts State Police, who are part of the Fusion Center. They are, they run the Fusion Center, from what I understand from previous FOIA requests. So I have put in 2 FOIA requests to both these parties, asking about, all of the details regarding this kidnap incident, and also asking for the footage, the body camera footage. And I've also put in a 3rd FOIA request to both the Quincy Police and to the Department of Mental Health in Massachusetts, asking them what their procedures generally are. What's the protocol? What's the policy regarding these Section 12 holds? How is it supposed to work? What kind of form do they have? Who's supposed to fill out that form? Is an interview supposed to be held? Pointing out that, no interview was held, and pointing out some of the many, many discrepancies that actually occurred. So I'm still awaiting information from them. And, I'm also building information for a proper report. I'm hoping to put out a press release soon just to define what exactly happened, so people have that information. I want that to be public, and I want people to contact me for interviews, because this is political persecution of a journalist. This is police retaliation for the exposure of police crimes, as
Well,
far as I can see.
But also,
I will go with you, most definitely.
Thank you.
and with regard to this psychiatric reprisal, the discrediting to silence you, it's also against strong women. It's used often to take children away from parents. It's also trauma-based. It's like a trauma-based mind control.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a satanic ritual abuse. And also this leads up in some instances to guardianship cases, because what happens is, this happened. Look at what happened with Britney Spears, and this has happened. They were trying to do this with Helena Chorba.
Really?
When you reach, when you're getting close to your 70s and you own a home, they want to discredit you. Point, they want to asset strip you and steal your home. They want to make it look like you're quote unquote crazy, that you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your home. So we're going to, institutionalize you, and to the point where we'll medicate and steal your home. And this is very common in some jurisdictions where the sheriff's department gets involved with the sheriff's sale, where they get houses if somebody can't pay their property taxes or whatever. But this is rampant across the country, and they do it to the elderly, also, not only intelligent, powerful women like you who have a voice, but they're doing it to elderly men and women who have assets. Maybe a spouse passed away and they were left with the marital residence. And they'll try to discredit the elderly person. Oh, they have Alzheimer's, or oh, they have this. But in many instances, it is not true. But and there's nobody there to be a proponent for these elders. And a lot of their homes are taken over. There are a couple of women in our community who have had that happen to their elder moms.
Wow, this is incredible, Lorraine. I'm really horrified to hear this. In fact, that is a subject we should speak openly about too. Yeah, I'd like to go further.
Yes.
We all have to speak out. That is the way we get this message out. And I believe that the medical community has to be re-educated to understand what Havana syndrome is. The police or the government has to be educated. And what I mean is local police. I don't think they have a clue as to what's going on. And some will say, yes, they do. But I don't know, it sounds to me as though they are being just locked into this one protocol, and they can only do one thing: take people away and lock them up.
That's right. But I think also, Frank, there are some police who are in the know. It's always a case of some people know. The infiltrators of the plans. And they're everywhere. Yes. They're in the hospitals, as I witnessed for myself. And I should tell you a couple things, actually, that actually speaks to the point that you both are making here. And that happened in the hospital. I overheard, I'll tell you, it's easy to overhear these people talking because they're right in front of you, first of all, and you're in full view of them and they're in full view of you. And I'm talking about the emergency room nurses, doctors, and staff, and they're talking as, regular volume, normal voices, because they think they own the place, right? And we, people who are being carted in, brought in, and being watched 24/7 are the demented patients, quote unquote patients, who are well beneath them. So they don't bother to hide what they're talking about. And I overheard this ER doc. Do you know what he's talking about? So he's on the phone, and it's up for grabs as to who he might have been talking to. But he said two things. So I would pose a bit of a problem to these people because I refused to consent to any clinical interaction. I didn't give urine, didn't give blood. I didn't do a COVID swab for the longest time. I finally caved and did it, at Friday evening because they duped me ultimately and told me the only way to get out of here is to see a psych and get out. So I decided, okay, what the heck, and did it, especially since there was nobody there and I didn't have any, familial support at that point in time. So I just did it, and actually, I that opened the door to further experience, which I now know more about and can write more about. But in any case, for a long time, I resisted, and I said no, no, no to everything. And so these guys wanted to get rid of me at the ER. They wanted to get rid of me, and I tried to tell them, look, you just have to open the doors and let me walk out. And they're like, no, you have to see a psych first, blah, blah, blah. And then they were on the phone, and I said, call Quincy Police and tell them they've made a horrible mistake and they need to let me go. Okay, because this is a false claim. As soon as I heard that nurse talk about it, I said, this is a false claim beginning to end, and they need to know that they're really liable, by doing this, by holding somebody who didn't do any of this. This is criminal. So they were on the phone with the police. I know that. And they were on the phone with other parties. So I don't know who it was this guy was talking to, but guess what he said? One thing he said was, yeah, we're calling a lot of other facilities. They called a bunch of other psych facilities. And but nobody wants to take her because there's no trauma. Okay,
boy.
there's no trauma. Because I was sitting quietly, with my, just sitting quietly. And I was, in fact, chatting with some of the people there, So there was clearly no trauma. I'm not mentally ill. I'm not in a state of psychosis. And I know better than to go to the ER and sort of create a scene. All I said was, no, I'm not taking your stuff. I'm not, not consenting. And you can say that pretty calmly. So,
Yes.
so this is what he said. So nobody wants to take her because there's no trauma. And then he said after a minute, yeah, I understand. You just want to get her into the system. You're looking for an access to get her into the system. How do you like that? That to me is a dead giveaway.
Absolutely. That's very important. I know that when it happened to me, of course, it was a little different for me because I had reported the crimes at my house. And to go back to Frank's question earlier, like how did I feel when I was going through it? The police officer turned to me and he said, "Well, are you going to go willingly or unwillingly?"
Oh God. Jeez.
And he said it several times where it went through my mind where I now understood what he was saying was, if you go willingly, we're not going to handcuff you. But if you object, we're going to put handcuffs on you and take you out of your own house.
Wow. They threatened me similarly,
yeah. Yes. So I said, I'll go willingly. But as soon as I got into the EMS truck, I said, I'm here against my will.
Yeah.
Everybody I met at the emergency room, I said, I'm here against my will. I reported a crime, and I'm being penalized for it. And I just went along with the protocol. I did not give them, I did not sign anything. I learned from other people that this happened to. I didn't sign anything. I refused other things. But evidently the police department wanted me drug tested. They gave me a drug test. I could not believe it. I don't smoke, drink alcohol, do drugs. I don't take an aspirin. I eat organic food. I don't eat meat or drink soda. But they had to drug test me.
I think that's what they were trying to do. I think that's what they were trying to do with me too. They just said, "Oh, we need to get a urine sample," and I'm like, "No, you don't. You're not getting a thing from me." But I think that's what it was. It was a drug test, as you said.
Yeah. And they want your DNA. Remember, they have to renew their grant. When you're a target and you're in this alleged program, they have to renew the grants every couple of years, and they have to.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So they have to give evidence and proof. Of course, even as it's confabulated, they have to have some. They
might. Yeah, if they take your urine, they could mix it up with somebody who does have drugs in their urine, right? I mean, can't put anything past them. Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a good point. But I thought it was so bizarre because I didn't understand why they wanted that, and then I found out later that it was a drug test. And it's like,
I'm glad you bring it up. I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't thought of it either, Lorraine. But I'll tell you, when I was there, I heard them talking. I was the talk of the town, both at the ER and upstairs, because I think they hadn't seen anybody like me, just saying no, 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 and then calling the Boston FBI, calling various people and telling them what was going on. So they were talking about me nonstop. They went to my website. They read my articles. They read out bits of my letters. They were just shouting and whooping because they couldn't believe some of the stuff I'd written. And hey, that's fine. But they also got into my email. Now tell me, how can these people get into my email except with some kind of collusion, right? With local police, with the FBI, So there's collusion going on. Getting into my email, talking about emails that I had sent, the snake venom story was going around. I'd written about it to somebody, and they were talking about that email. Things like that, outrageous. So, what was I going to say? So So one of the things these people said was, they think, they think she's addicted. They think she's an addict.
Oh no!
And I'm thinking, what? Oh, really? An addict to what? Coffee? Green tea? I'm wondering what they're talking about. Yeah, I'll tell you.
They tried to create all these different scenarios to see if you
I
would
think so.
bite
Correct.
on
And
one.
I think correct. And I think this urine test was associated with this little label they had come up with. Oh, she's an addict. They think she's an addict. And when they took me to the psych ward, turns out very interestingly, this particular psych ward is just for substance abuse and overdosed people. All right. So I met a bunch of people like in their 30s, some in their 40s, some in their 20s, who all have issues with drugs and with alcohol. And there was one guy who was supposedly, I mean, he drank 4 pints of vodka to end up on the floor, right, for a few days over there. Now, this guy was classic because he was supposedly being detoxed. But, my God, he was throwing fits, like really acting out big time, yelling, shouting, swearing, cussing, when he couldn't get his whatever drug they were giving him to detox him from the alcohol. And
that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, so the whole place was filled with people who, well, I met, they're all good people, but they all had some kind of strange, drug profile scenario associated with them. So I think this whole what they did over here to me was part of a framing to frame me as somebody who's been in a psych ward for drug addiction or alcohol addiction. You know what I mean? So to put that on the record, put it in the medical records and all this other rubbish. So I think that's part of what they were trying to do. And also understanding now that this urine test, which they kept trying to get me to do, could have been a drug test. Hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what they could not find a category. They could not find a compartment that you fit into because you
That's
were
right.
totally sane. So what they had to do is dream up drug addiction. Isn't that simple?
Yes.
They should have sent.
I've never taken a single drug in my life. I can tell you that much. So this is a joke to me.
Did they
Yes.
ask you any
And I was
questions?
labeled paranoid and delusional. I was labeled paranoid and delusional for reporting the police reports on the crimes on my property that I have bona fide evidence for, videos, witnesses. I mean, my testimony's all over
Unbelievable.
the internet, photos, right?
Yeah, and that term, by the way, is something they use like a weapon against everyone. This guy wrote that on the form that he had my name affixed to as well. Yeah, and I think the thing to understand through all of this is, as Frank said, they're dreaming up these categories, and they're literally pulling out these labels out of thin air, and they're pulling it out of the DSM as well, as we know, Lorraine. These are, DSM labels designed to discredit people. And they're fixing it to us, and in no way does that record, no way is it associated with us. So.
No, and for all the people that are listening that get the label of schizophrenia, honestly, no one turns schizophrenic in their adult years. The only thing that causes this, and it might even be temporary, is there is something called marijuana psychosis, and if you smoke too much weed for too long, you can have temporary psychosis. And the pharmaceutical drugs have some very horrific negative side effects. And coupled with the weapons, the directed energy weapons, or the people that are getting the telepathy, the synthetic telepathy, this is not naturally occurring. This is induced. And also, for the record, through psychiatry, many psychiatrists are of the belief that schizophrenia is a result of disassociating from a trauma. So again, once again, if someone is disassociating from something that's trauma, something that happened in childhood, these people need to be treated with care.
That's right.
And not falsely labeled. But you don't get diagnosed with schizophrenia when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. It doesn't happen. But these
It
criminals,
doesn't happen, but they try hard. They try hard.
Ramola, I think you should. I think you should work to get this expunged from your record because it's totally false.
It
Has
is, and this is why I'm so public about it. And I'm happy to do interviews with pretty much anybody who wants to talk to me. Anyone kind of professional, that is.
Sure.
And who's
Yeah.
in the truth media world, rather than, I'm not going to go on shows that are going to be skeptical or whatever. But anybody who's interested in the truth and in further exposing some of the corruption and crime we are surrounded and immersed in, surrounded by and immersed in, I'd be happy to go on their shows. And I am going to write a lot more about it because as a journalist, I think they literally handed me a story on a platter here, and the thing is, and I'll tell you, you guys were part of that whole move to publicize what had happened to me, to alert other people, and to call in and alert the hospital so that they would let me go, And the fact is, there are many people in alt media and in the world of intellectual engagement, I think, who are very aware of my work, who know who I am, and who know that I'm very much a very reliable truth media journalist,
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing more of what you're going to write and do on this topic. It's so important, not only for targeted people, but it appears to be an assault on women, especially women with a voice, intelligent women. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen to men. And it's a very sensitive topic. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. But it also overlaps with this guardianship issue. This is a very serious matter.
Yes, and in fact, I wanted to it needs to be exposed. And I wanted to actually mention a couple of things. I may have gone off track earlier and not said it, but I wanted to say that one of the things that I learned while I was there was they didn't want to let me go after the 3-day hold. Some of the people there, some of the doctors, the nurses, the prison guards, I call them the prison guards, they're called counselors. They literally hang out in the corridors and stare at you, and they're literally behaving like prison guards. But those guys were talking amongst themselves and saying things like, they don't want to let her go. Did you see that letter? Did you see that notice that she's written, the language? And did you hear her video recording and how powerful her voice was?
Or how many licenses you have, or how long you've been a journalist, and how educated you are, and what about all the people that you interview? You interview top-notch scientists, doctors, other journalists. Come on. I mean, for them to do this is just insanity. It's just insanity.
No, it's ridiculous. I'll tell you. No, I think they have, they've shot themselves in the foot with this brilliant action of theirs, which is why I think they've handed me a story on the platter, and they've created an opening for the story of targeting to become mainstream, through this incident, because, hey, I'm not going to be hiding under a bushel and saying, oh, please don't mention that I was psych held. No, please. Spread the word. Tell everybody what happened over here, because this is our way out. This is our way forward. We publicize everything like this, which is so obnoxious and so egregious that they've done, that it clearly exposes them. And just to complete what I was saying over there, so the thing I heard was they're going to get the DA and get her before a judge and a psychologist, and she can choose whether she speaks or not. But we're going to do it, and they were coming up with a little plan. We're going to get the ambulance to the back door, and we're going to knock on the door and all this stuff. So I'll tell you what, as soon as I heard this, immediately, I knew what I had to do. I said, look, I'm a living woman, and I'm not answering to any name. So they would poke their heads around the room and say, who are you? What's your name? And I, like an idiot, had been answering earlier until I realized this is what they were doing. They were actually calling jurisdiction on you. they were calling jurisdiction, so I promptly said, no, I'm not answering to any name because names are being used against me. And after that, they started saying, well, don't know what to call her. Maybe excuse me or hey. So I also stopped eating, by the way, and that's another story. After Saturday, after I saw their first psychiatrist, I personally felt I had done what they had said was the way to get out. I had seen a psychiatrist, and I asked this guy, open the door and let me out, please, now that I've spoken with you. He said, I can't do that. I have to go and read the reports, and, it's Saturday, and I can't do it, and blah, blah, blah. So I stopped eating for two reasons. One was the jurisdiction reason. I decided I'm not going to eat their food and be forced into their jurisdiction anymore. And two, they didn't have any vegan food. So, they were
horrible.
It was horrible.
So
it was easy. Yeah, it was easy to, just refuse the food. So I didn't eat Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I think my husband visited me on Monday, and he brought pistachios and almonds because they told him you can't bring real food. So in any case, I lost some weight, which is great.
Well, that's fine. Where do you think this is going to go from here? I mean, I'm with your permission, I'm going to make this as public as I can. And
yes, please do. And Frank, I will send you my press release. I'm just finalizing it and fine-tuning it right now. I'm debating whether to publish it on my website. I probably should because it is press release, right? But I want to give it to people so they can do what they want.
I'll tell you a story. I'm not going to tell you the gentleman's name, but there was a man down south, and you know who he is. His initials are JL. And he was in a dispute with his next door neighbor. And his next door neighbor had him put into psych ward. And if he did not do what he was told, he was going to have to go to jail for verbal assault or something like that on his neighbor. So finally, what it all boiled down to is he put something on his website that got the neighbor's attention. And then the court system got involved on the website, freedom of speech again. So this guy was really dragged over the coals. And it's because he didn't have a proper attorney. You cannot tell somebody to take something down off of their website like that. You can't.
No.
Freedom of speech.
And also, it's not slander if it's true.
It's not slander if it's true. It is, yeah. But, this issue of the names, I'll tell you, I've gotten one slightly sensitive to the use of the neighbors' names because I figured out when they started to protest, they didn't like my mentioning their names in this notice, and they didn't like my mentioning the house numbers, etc. This is exactly what they should be worried about, and they should worry about their own safety, generally speaking, not in regards to me, but generally speaking, when they engage in crimes against their neighbors. So because of that sensitivity that I acquired in listening to what, how they were reacting, etc., I decided I would remove from my website those particular articles I've published that have names and that have numbers, house numbers, to protect them because I don't want anybody to harm anybody. I mean, I'm against violence of every kind against anybody, and even people who are bad. I don't want to be responsible for bad things to happen to them, whether they're good people or bad people. Don't put it on my doorstep. So I took those articles down, and I will think about it and look at it and decide whether to re-upload those articles without those names. That's something for me to figure out. But in my press release, I have kept the names out of it. My press release doesn't name anybody, except I think it might name this guy, Tim O'Brien, who put his name on the form. No, he didn't put his name on the form, but another police officer put his name on the form. This guy gave his name to me when I asked, who are you? And when I went on the website, this is actually interesting. He is known as a something like a jailhouse aversion or officer, something like that. I forget the exact. His job apparently, jail diversion clinician. That's what it is. Jail diversion clinician. His job is to keep people from getting into the jail system, supposedly mentally ill people from getting into the criminal justice system. But in actuality, he's doing the exact opposite.
Yes, yes. He's dropping you off at the doorstep.
Yes. Exactly. And judging from what I heard at the ER, that's what they were looking for. They were looking for an access point to get me into the system. And then later on, conversation suggested they wanted to keep me in the system for 2 more weeks, get me in front of a judge and all that stuff. And as I said, the answer is the name. You know, you have to step away from that name, which they think they own.
Right. They didn't have a pigeonhole to put you in, so they had to try and create one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We don't have anything here. Dump her off onto somebody else. Oh, so that's what happens too. And then somebody else will get a cut of the insurance or whatever, whatever.
Hadn't thought of that. Wow.
Yeah.
There's insurance involved there.
Yes, in fact, with my situation, I knew that I was going home that night. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. And I did. Within 6 hours of my kidnapping abduction, I was home. Thank you to my mom, who drove 2 hours to wait for me. And she would not leave the hospital without me. But the point is that the woman, I don't know, should I say her name? Tina Booth, the mom at PESS who did not have a license, was labeling me all kinds of things. When she called the next day, and I found this out through the hospital, she was so upset that I was gone. I guess she thought that I was going to stay there indefinitely. But so they said, oh no, she was very upset that you are not there anymore.
Oh.
Like, well, why would I be there?
So evil.
Yeah, she was upset. Mm-hmm. She's probably going to get, maybe some additional income for my being there overnight. But I did not stay overnight. I was gone that evening. I guess I was released around 8 p.m. after my 2:30, 3 p.m. abduction.
But that was great. How did they release you? Because see, this is the thing they did not do with me. The time informant was around 1 o'clock or 1:30 when they grabbed me, and I kept saying no to everything, but they just kept holding on to me. And by the way, I was frozen out and starved the entire time I was there in the ER for 2 days, 1.5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a combination of things. One. They sent me to the emergency room and not the psychiatric department, which is located in the same hospital. But I also don't have medical insurance. So there wasn't anything for them to bill. I mean, they were going to bill me.
Oh, that's the trick. That's the trick. Yeah.
I have no medical insurance, and I refused to sign anything. And I kept anybody that I met with, a nurse or a nurse practitioner, I was very nice to them, very calm. And just told them that I'm here against my will. I'm here because I reported a crime, and I'm being discredited, and I just like to go home. So, and I said that for hours, and yes, the food was horrible. I hadn't eaten anything, and I asked them if I could have something to eat, and they brought me a sugar-coated Frosted Flakes. I said, I'm sorry, I can't eat this.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, this is why people are dying in hospital. Sugar-coated frosted flakes.
Well, they wanted to see if you responded to large amounts of sugar.
Well, I like sugar. I like chocolate and cookies and stuff, but sugar-coated frosted flakes? I was starving. Like, I wanted a salad.
Yeah, wow, Lorraine. Yeah. I know, Lorraine. I think you just revealed something to me right here. I think the reason they helped me is because of my husband's insurance. He has insurance, and I'm on his policy. So I think that's one of the reasons they held on to me so tight. And another is, I'm sure there was a vindictive agenda against me to get me into their system, as this guy said. They were so desperate to get me into their system.
Ramola, you know what they are too? Jealous.
Mm-hmm.
They're jealous.
Jealous.
You're very
Jealous.
intelligent, very excellent command of the English language, and they are jealous. That's another
Jealous.
thing that you can add on to your neighbor. She's jealous of you.
Oh God. The neighbor is a paid mercenary assassin type, unfortunately, is what I think. And clearly an informant provocateur. And the other thing, they have started up this crap around me again. I thought after this incident, when I have clearly publicly stated the truth of the matter, which is they have engaged, these are police crimes of retaliation, I thought that they would subside, but no, they have amped up the neighborhood harassment. That woman sends her child out with a cell phone to sit on the porch when I go out of my house. And she engages in it. So the neighborhood watch stuff is going on again. And I've been swarmed in stores since I came back. So I think this intention or desperation to try to provoke and harass in public and elicit a kind of acting out is a protocol that they have simply picked up on and have unleashed once more.
Ramola, I believe that if you said hello to your next door neighbor, she would call the police. I believe that.
It's like that. Yes. I'm not speaking to any of them. Absolutely ignoring all of them. This is what is. These are people who have taken money, who have taken bribes, or who have succumbed to the local police presence to engage in this fashion, and it's very, very sad to see. And I think this is happening, obviously, not just to me. You've all experienced it, and many people around the country are reporting this. It shows how America has sunk into full-on communism at this point. Communism or Stasiism or Nazism or God knows what precisely. But it's not, the old America currently.
Oh, the
yes,
old
and
America.
Unfortunately.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, like when you go to the FBI website and the other websites, it says if you see something, say something.
Oh,
so
God,
we turn
yeah.
into a snitch society where
Correct.
the snitch is being protected. Now they could say anything, and remember, just think about taking a slice of society. There are a lot of people, like you mentioned, that are addicts, and maybe they're looking for some extra money to buy drugs, and they'll do anything. Yeah, sure, I'll snitch on my neighbor.
They'll do anything.
I'll call my neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll do anything, and people are doing things for money, and that's another thing too. I think the economy has been so ravaged that people have very little choice, and the whole story of surveillance capitalism, right? We have become a surveillance-rich society. That's where the jobs are, in security, with the police, with the intelligence community.
Do you know who owns Motorola? China.
No.
China. Do you know who owns Volvo? China. This is good. I could go on and on and on, but these people are getting flipped out of the United States. They're finally cracking down on all of this communist regime infiltration. And I could not believe some of the companies that are China owned. And
that's really interesting.
Close
to
I think
China.
Go ahead, Ramola.
I was just going to say, I think China and Israel both have a great part to play in terms of ownership of corporations and also ownership of contracts, engaging in services. And it's quite visible in many areas of the country. But so there's a lot of foreign presence in our country. That's one thing, and another thing is what you were talking about is everything's become incorporated. It's all about profit, and there's these public-private partnerships between the so-called government agencies, which are also corporations, and a bunch of private corporations, and they're all operating in a ruthless, mercenary fashion, not in an ethical, aware, conscious, citizen, civic-minded fashion. They're not about community; they're about profit.
Yes. And I think that some of these neighborhood watch groups, I do believe that we're in a snitch society now, and it's really the downfall of a civilized society when people are ratting on people and creating a narrative, a false narrative to frame an innocent person. But yeah, it needs to be. That also needs to be exposed. I think a lot of people are not even aware of that, and the fact that the intelligence agency can say, well, if you see something, say something. Well, that kind of makes sense. Like if you see a crime, you should report a crime. I mean, that's serious, very important. But if your neighbor is cutting the grass and you just don't like that neighbor, and you create a narrative, well, that needs to be investigated. The neighbor for reporting a false crime, faking something, should be penalized. Yeah. But that's not happening because that's part of this agenda to take down innocent people for a profit. I mean, we are being trafficked. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you're being abducted from your home and I'm being abducted from mine, and we're law-abiding citizens minding our own business, there's an agenda here.
Correct, 100%.
It should not be tolerated.
Yeah, we need to switch right back to that situation that would make more sense, which is you only report crimes, and you're not allowed to report meaningless, substanceless allegations. And the police, when they are called, their job is investigation, is it not?
Yes.
Their job is not capture, kidnapping, and further crime.
Yeah, the policeman retires. What was your big event in your career? Well, I took Ramola D to
the Carney Hospital.
Yeah, it's getting down to that.
Well, how much real crime did they fight? How much real crime?
They probably fight a lot, and you can't really take that away from them. Some of the police at different departments are very, very deep in crime, such as Boston, the city of Boston. There's a lot. But
crime would be something that's obvious, isn't it? Something like a robbery or murder or, I don't know, something like that. Those are crimes, aren't they? And doing bad things, harming people, that's a crime, right? And, So what are they doing capturing people who are not harming people,
Wasting.
Well, this is how they're making money. They're making money off of us. And also, again, crediting of the truth tellers. Yeah.
This is it's also part of the censorship campaigns. They're trying to shut down any kind of truth telling, any kind of real journalism. It seems very odd to me, but they really seem to think that they can continue and should be allowed to continue their rampant, unlawful operations of engaging in secretive neighborhood watch, the use of what they're calling technical surveillance. The CIA calls this ubiquitous technical surveillance. The NSA probably does too, which is the use of EMF technology. They are literally at a point, if you look at some of their documents and listen to what they say in their conferences, they're at a point where they're striving to normalize the use of microwave, EMF, spectrum technologies on people, and they're giving this power to certain people. They're giving it to the intelligence agencies, giving it to the Department of Justice, and everybody that they employ. They're giving it to the hospitals because now they're moving it also into the arena of biomedicine and telemedicine through the use of nanobiosensors, which you may have heard a lot of recently with the whole COVID vaccine finding.
Right, that's
Yes.
another whole show right there.
That's another,
Right.
yes, that's a whole other
Exactly.
topic.
Yeah.
We could spend probably 8 hours on that. And anytime
Yeah.
you guys would like to get together again and talk about that, we can.
Yeah.
You know, we have to
Yeah.
look at the situation. And I said, I think Wednesday evening, that one of the first things Ramola is going to say is, don't let the fact that I have been put into this institution stop you or slow you down. And you sort of alluded to that in the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, use it. Use it is what I'm saying. Publicize it. Talk freely about it. It's like I put my name out there as a journalist on this subject way back, literally 8 years ago when I was first targeted. And I turned my attention from all of my other writing and started to investigate research and be a journalist on the subject. And that has not stopped. So use it. I have no qualms whatsoever. You can use my name.
Well, that's great. Could you do me a favor? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to say your last name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. We all know.
Yeah, well, okay, so I should say this whole notion of name, again, it's a matter of jurisdiction. So I should say that at this point in time, the names that I have used in the past and that are still associated with me are still part of my journalistic profile, Ramola D or Ramola Dharmaraj, which is the spelling out of D, which is my father's first name, Dharmaraj. But, when I autograph documents or when I operate, professionally, I'm using my, appellate, or the way in which you autograph it is a little bit different. You use a colon before your name. You put it all in lowercase, and you use a colon before your last name, just to say that you are, basically the idea is that, your Christian first name is what identifies you, but not the last name. It's the last name. The concept of last name, a surname, is theirs. So you would say you come from the house of or from the family of, and use the last name there. But it's very, very tricky the way they are taking the convention of people's names, but kind of capturing them into jurisdiction and pinning people down through that means. So it's kind of ridiculous, but it's so fraudulent. So you just kind of have to be careful when you're writing things.
Right. You've got the corporate name, and you have the common, I think it was relayed to me as the common man.
The common man. Okay. I'm sorry, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm actually somebody that would like to speak to us. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, hi, Frank.
Hi, how you doing?
Just want to offer a short prayer, if I may.
Can you guys hear?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, dear Creator God, Source, Oneness, Universe, thank you for disabling all the technologies that are being used to harm targeted individuals everywhere. And so it is. Amen.
Very good, Stephen. Is there a question you'd like to ask Ramola or Lorraine?
No, but I've seen some of their videos, or Ramola's, and I'm very impressed and hopeful. I recently met with a congressional representative. Well, my congressperson here in New Mexico is Melanie Stansberry, and I met with her director of constituent services. And I just flat out told them the truth, what's been going on with me for 8 years. And I gave them some documents that I got off the internet that explains about the frequency torture and stuff. And so we'll see. We pledged to stay in touch. So we'll see what happens. Specifically, I asked them if she would consider holding hearings through the Science and Space Technology Committee that she sits on, or alternatively pushing very hard for hearings from one of the military intelligence oversight committees. And I just wanted to share that as well. But a specific question for the ladies, no, not at this time, but thank you very much for all you do, for all of you do.
Okay, we have another caller. Go ahead, caller. It's anonymous.
Oh, hi. Am I on?
Yes, you are. Do you have a question
okay,
for?
hi.
Do you have a question for
Well, actually,
Ramola or Lorraine?
actually, a comment.
Sure.
Because I feel bad for Ramola because I learned early at my previous apartment from hell that I do not speak to my neighbors. I don't interact with them at all, even if they're cordial and say hi, how you doing? I'm as silent as a lamb. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
Not speaking and not interacting, and many thanks. Yeah.
Okay, is that it, anonymous?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, do you have any more questions, sir?
No, I'm late to the call, so I guess I really don't.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, this is all about Ramola being taken away against her will, against her civil rights, against her constitutional rights. But you can listen to the tape. It'll be up on YouTube. And both of you wonderful people have another opportunity if you'd like to join the conference call at 9 p.m. Eastern. I will text you both the credentials to get in. I don't know how you feel about that, Ramola, but you're welcome to.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it, Frank, but thank you so much for having me on this call, and feel free to, post the transcript or the video, the audio anywhere. Yeah.
We shall do that. It'll probably get streamed again, and that we had a couple of bugs, so that'll iron out the bugs. Okay, we have another caller here. Hello. Go ahead, sir.
This is Craig in Sydney, Australia, Craig LaForest.
Hi, Craig. Oh, this is a very, very wonderful person. You probably know Craig Ramola.
Is this Craig from Australia?
Yes, it is.
Oh, lovely to hear from him. Say hi to Craig.
This is Craig from Australia. What a wonderful, wonderful delivery today. I can't find the words. What a wonderful presentation that you have all done on behalf of all TIs. It is absolutely outrageous what happened to you, Ramola. You know I hold you in such high regard. And Frank, for the work that you do for us around the world. We have so many afflicted people with this technology. I have the V2K implants, as you know. I am bombarded with the radiation every single day. And obviously, the more we speak out about it, the more we are deemed to be delusional. One day, this will change. Hopefully in our lifetimes. If not, it will happen for future generations, which is so unfortunate. So all I wanted to call in and say was thank you so much for the discussion today. I sat here, it was very emotional, and I was teary at sometimes thinking how amazing good people are, and at the same time had some wonderful laughs. And one of them, Ramola, was when you mentioned, robbers, police do go and charge robbers these days, don't they? And I sat back and laughed, and I thought, after what we go through, yeah, do robbers still get charged if they go and rob a bank? I don't know.
No, they're going to slap on the wrist and they say, "Give me some."
We don't have anything better to do than talk about what we go through. I mean, I have a fantastic life except for the targeting. I do a lot of work for, as I've mentioned in the past, for fundraisers. I have fundraiser concerts at my home, and I've worked with foster children. And to be targeted is just it's degrading. It's such a conflict in my soul. And thank God, as the gentleman who made the prayer initially said, "Thank you, dear Creator of everything." And if you have a spiritual connection, it really helps you get through this.
Sure does.
So, again, I just wanted to call in and thank you and praise you for the work that you do, all of you.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Seriously, lovely to hear from you. And honestly, everyone who stands up and stands out and speaks openly about this is, helping to inform the world and raising public awareness. And as you say, one day everybody's going to know.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
you. Thank you. Be safe, all of you. So wonderful to hear you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
He does a lot for the community. He is a wonderful guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know where Lorraine is. She should be here. Oops. I can pick her up again. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think we lost her.
So are you closing the show in a minute or two, Frank?
Probably within the next 8 minutes or so.
Okay.
I just wanted to give Lorraine the opportunity to get back in here and, give
Sure.
a closing statement with you. I think Craig's going to be a guest. He doesn't know it yet. He's been a guest in the past, and he's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. And great that he called in, and great that he mentioned all the things that he did. And also the caller that called in and talked about possibly getting this in front of the Science and Space Program Committee or something. That's pretty great if he can do that. That would be public exposure, and that would be very good. I would also recommend that everybody who's targeted look into what Anna von Reitz has done and examine the advantages of declaring your political status as a national state citizen.
Right. Hi, Lorraine. We lost you.
Hi. I'm back.
I tried to get you back, but we had
That's
to come in.
okay. I only missed, 8 or 9 minutes.
Okay, we need to have some closing statements here. And I think I'll go first. And what I'm going to say is stick together. We have to watch each other very carefully to make sure this doesn't happen and go unnoticed. Okay, Lorraine, your closing statement?
Yes, my closing statement would be if this happens to anyone, send an SOS, literally a text message to anyone, any time of the day, and don't sign anything. Photograph everything in your handbag. Be calm. Do whatever they tell you to do within reason, and know that you're going to be fine and get out. This is tyranny. This is this has to be stopped.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to
Absolutely.
love my Constitution.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're done, we can move on to Ramola's closing statement.
Okay. All I want to say is, well, thank you all very much for being there, for paying attention, and for, engaging in action on my behalf. I'm very grateful. And as you know, Frank, that's how I learned that you'd actually come to see me, and you sent a note with several people's phone numbers on it. And I had, from the inside, I had made calls and asked people to publicize. So I'm grateful to everybody from the outside who publicized what was happening and who spread the word on social media and who made the phone calls. I think those kinds of things are very, very important. But again, because of what happened, I would recommend that in these cases, when you're calling to try to rescue somebody from a hospital, stay polite with everybody you speak to, but be very firm, and just sort of try to say that these are false claims, these are wrongful arrests, and this person is 100% sane and needs to be released immediately, etc. And that's all you need to say, really. So that would be my advice. And, just to say thank you. And if this happens to you, never give up. Never give up your sense of self. Have courage always. Do not consent to anything that you do not want to give consent to. You do not have to consent to drug tests, urine tests, blood work, blood pressure, anything, any clinical interaction, or even a COVID swab. And, you have a right to ask to speak to people outside, whether it's your family or lawyers or a mediator, an advocate for you. And you have a right to communicate with these people and ask them to let you go, as Lorraine, I think, demonstrated really clearly in her experience as well.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for making an appearance here tonight. And what this does, it enlightens all of the targets as to what can happen. What can we do about it? What do we do about it? And these are things that we can work on now. I think that this will come up during our conference call at 9 o'clock. And Lorraine, you're welcome. If you don't have the numbers, I'll text them to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll do that.
And thank you for having me. And thank you, Ramola, for suggesting it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Lorraine, for being on here. I think it made it really, really meaningful. And thank you, Frank, for inviting both of us to your call tonight.
I think that I'm going to take us out. My name is Frank Allen, and good night from Boston, Massachusetts. Allegiance to the flag, whatever flag they offer. Never intel